Welcome, lovers! I don't know what I'm doing, but you probably already knew that. And today I decided that I should talk about more pet peeve-esque things. I read a whole lot of fan fiction. Hello, I'm a fangirl. Nice to meet you. I have had the soul of a fangirl my entire life. I just didn't know what to call it until I joined fandoms on Tumblr, which was a couple years ago at this point. But I am part of a fuck ton of fandoms, which means I read a fuck ton of fanfiction. I absolutely love fanfiction so much, regardless of what kind it is. As long as it's well written and has a good plot, then I love it. But there are so many things that happen in fanfiction that bother the shit out of me. I have so many pet peeves, and we're gonna talk about it. Okay, so first we're going to talk about smut. Yes, I read smut. I'm a human being. Hello. Don't get me wrong, I love smut. I do, if it's written well. But what I really hate is smut for the sake of smut. Like, for the same reason that I don't watch porn. Like, well, first of all, I can't watch porn because I can't even watch people kissing in public without being like, ooh, stop, no, uncomfortable. But part of it is because they try to put these really nothing is what the fuck going on plot, not plot stories type of a thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with reading smut, and I do sometimes. And when I'm in the mood to read that kind of thing, I like to read something that makes sense. Because, like, why would you just write a half plot that doesn't even go anywhere, or that goes in a million different directions and makes no sense, and it just, the whole entire thing is just, I don't even know what's happening because there's no plot. Like, I get it, it's supposed to be smut, but if there's no plot, nobody's gonna be able to understand what you're even saying. Like, why? Why? Also, I just remembered my mom watches these videos. Hi, Mom! And it just is, like, really infuriating. And another thing about smut in particular that bothers me is if it's about actual people, and they'll take a person and they'll be like, oh, this person would obviously be a sub or a dom, and I'm like, if you know anything about BDSM, you know that you're wrong. Like, it's so obvious so much of the time that, like, so many people will write them as one thing and it's so obvious that they're the other, and it's a personal thing for me. I'm just like, why would you, if you don't know about it, why would you write about, I don't know. Just learn about what you're writing about before you write about it, especially when it comes to things as intimate as BDSM, because there are so many things that happen in BDSM. Because there's very minor things like asphyxiation, basic choking, stuff like that. And then there's some heavy ass shit that involves cutting each other and, you know, hanging each other from the ceiling. Shit that if you don't use safe words or know what a safe word is, people could die. Like, I get that it's fan fiction, but for people who are new to those communities, they need to learn basic safety shit. So don't write about this kind of stuff if you don't know the basics of how to be safe. It bothers me. Another thing that bothers me about fanfiction, this one is about a very particular fandom, which is the cryotic fandom. I usually like to read them because I like the action-adventure part of it, and he always gets the action-adventure stories. But what really annoys me is him in particular, the only story anyone ever writes about him is Walking Dead being a real thing. Like that, just that. Never any other kind of story, just that. And it annoys me. And don't get me wrong, that can be a wonderful plot line, but the only one? Really? You get tired of one plot line after a while. Another thing that bothers me is when I read fan fiction, I like to read it to be somewhat realistic. Like, people will go writing on these stories and they'll use the name of someone from a particular fandom and they will completely rewrite their personality. Like, somebody will write a fanfiction about, like, give me one. Thomas Sanders. Somebody will write a fanfiction about Thomas Sanders and make him, like, an asshole in their fanfiction. And I'm like, he's like the sweetest little cinnamon bun in the world. And you're writing him like an asshole. If you're going to write a new character, write a new character. Don't try to twist somebody who actually exists into an OC. Like, what OC stands for original character. But it bothers me so much, and so many people do it in, like, all the fandoms, and I'm like, just make your own character. They are nothing like this. And another thing in relevance to that is if the person they're writing about has a significant other, instead of just writing an AU, alternate universe, where that person just isn't with them or is not existent, they decide to write a storyline about how they broke up in it, which I guess is okay sometimes, but 9 times out of 10, they write it so that their significant other does something really fucking shitty that they would never do. Like, on the amount of times I have read a fanfiction about, like, Jack or Mark or something like that, and they wrote it so that Amy or Cena, like, fucking cheated on them or something, or did something really fucking horrible, and that's how their relationships ended. I'm like, no! They're not like that at all! That's not how their personalities are! They would never do that! Just write an AU! It's not that hard. And on the topic of the fact that I really like fanfiction that has good storyline and plot, so many times will I come across a fanfiction where they don't know what the hell they're doing with the plot, like, at all. Like, it'll go one way and then it'll go the other way, or something that won't make sense will happen, or they'll ignore something that happened beforehand and just have something else happen. And I'm like, do you read your own story before you keep writing it? I don't get it. Like, if you're writing a fan fiction that you're going to post publicly for other people to read, wouldn't you want to write it so that other people would like it? I mean, the story has to make sense and there has to be a plot for people to like it. So why would you not try to make it make sense? I don't get it. And the next thing I would like to talk about is in the sense that, as I've said before, I like my fanfictions to make sense. So much of the time, there will be a fanfiction where stuff happens, like somebody will get kidnapped or beaten the shit out of or assaulted in other ways and stuff like that. And, you know, there are stories like that. Some people like to read that kind of stuff. I get it. But when you write it so that it happens over and over and over and over from the same people, real life people are not that dumb. Like, real life people, 9 times out of 10, are smart enough to know that if you are even threatened for this kind of a thing to happen, you call the police. Common sense. It needs to be a thing in fan fiction. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some where it is there, but there are so many where just, like, somebody would get assaulted and then threatened and then assaulted and then kidnapped and then threatened, like, by the same person repetitively, and the characters never think to call the police. No person in their right mind in the real world, especially when it comes to fan fiction about real people, would ever not call the police to deal with these situations. It just doesn't make sense, and it annoys me so much, because I'll be reading it and I'll be like, you're so stupid! You made your character so stupid! And it, The next thing that is going to be discussed now is when fandoms take their fan fiction too far. And the prime example for this is Septiplier. It's a situation of things like smut, or like when you pair people together who are real people and like they're two dudes and they aren't actually gay. You're supposed to keep that out of like the main tags of social media. Tumblr, Twitter, whatever. You're supposed to keep it out of the main tags because, first of all, there are a lot of people in the fandom who don't want to see that kind of stuff. Second of all, the actual people that you're writing about may not want to see it, especially if you're writing them in a gay story and they're not gay. And Septiplier, as I've said, is the perfect example of this, because it got to a point where there was a bunch of smut and stuff popping up in the main tags. And the people, Mark and Jack, saw it all the time, and they very clearly stated publicly it makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to see it. It needs to stay out of the main tags. It needs to stay away from the other people who also don't want to see it. And it needs to not be brought up to them in their like live streams and stuff like that, because it was getting that far. I don't understand how you can claim to admire and appreciate and love a person or a creator or something like that, and then do stuff that you know makes them uncomfortable. Like, if they're doing a live stream and you know they don't like talking about this particular ship and you bring it up anyway, or like, you know they don't like it in the main tags and you put it in the main tags anyway, you keep writing stuff they don't want to see anyway. Like, it's okay to write stuff like that, but put it in a place where they won't find it, because it makes them uncomfortable. And not only are you being disrespectful of them and all the other people who don't want to see that kind of stuff, but you're automatically giving a bad vibe and like an I don't like you kind of idea in the head of somebody that you claim to admire. What does that accomplish? Like, why would you ever do this? It's only going to end with people being upset. And the last thing we're going to talk about is people who do not whatsoever proofread their fanfiction before posting it. Like, I'm not talking about like a couple spelling errors in like the whole thing. I'm talking about half of an entire paragraph is like you can't read it because they didn't check their spelling, or like they repeated 2 paragraphs twice because they weren't paying attention and then just rewrote the same thing, or like their grammar is so off and iffy and what the hell is going on that you can't understand what they're trying to say no matter how many times you read it. And it's just like, if you're putting something out in public for other people to read, you want them to understand it. And I'm like, why would you not proofread it? I don't know, it's weird, and it don't make no sense to me. So, fanfiction, I absolutely love it. Smut is perfectly okay. Any kind of ships are perfectly okay. Whatever kink you happen to have is okay. Making an OC and putting it together with a person who exists is perfectly okay, as long as you do it right and don't make people uncomfortable with it. Oh, I almost forgot. People who don't put trigger warnings. How could I almost forget that? That's such a huge one. There are people who write fan fiction and like will have like depression, self-harm, assault, all that kind of stuff to every degree, and will put no trigger warnings at all. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've started reading a sentence and be like, nope, I can't do this. I'm gonna be, can't do it. And there are people who like will start reading a sentence like that and they will automatically be triggered because they have a particular word. And it's, how can, it's so bad. There are so many people in the world who have been through some awful shit that I don't understand how you can write fiction or anything like that and put it out in public and not think of the fact that there could be consequences for not putting a warning on it. People could have an attack or an episode, or like if you decide to put imagery in your fanfiction, which a lot of people do, and you put flash imagery, people could have a freaking seizure. Like, it's... that is such a horrible thing that people really need to just pay attention to. just we need some common human decency in that part. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys in this video. I hope you liked it, but if you didn't, that is perfectly fine, but hopefully I'll see you in the next video anyway. So until then, I hope your day is as lovely as you are. So, bye! What do you get when you cross a penis and a potato? You get a dictator. Are you ashamed of me?